Hi, for this training, we're going to spend about 20 minutes reviewing our patient safety program and our goal of achieving zero preventable harm and our journey towards high reliability. My name is Jen Kaiser. I am the patient safety officer, so I oversee all of our event reporting and provide oversight to our safety culture here at Pomeranian Hospital. Everything that we're reviewing today, I have broken down into three key areas. So it's important that we understand why safety matters because we are taking care of humans and we need to prevent harm or injury during their experience of care. Number two is the 5 safety behaviors. So when we take a look at safety as a whole, we focus first on systems, but we also understand that human error is what leads to mistakes within weak systems. And so we're teaching error prevention habits. So this will be a longer session in this second part to focus on what those error prevention tools are. And finally, we'll wrap up with our Speak Up program. So we can't learn if we don't understand fully what's happening. And so we have deference to expertise, meaning that those at the front line, those doing the work, it's important that they feel supported and comfortable with speaking up with what they identify and are seeing in everyday work. So I mentioned in the beginning that we are on a journey towards high reliability. So let's talk about what that means a little bit. So all of our patient safety focuses are based on what we call highly reliable organizations. So this was first introduced by a group of researchers who examined similar characteristics of safety in high complex industries like aviation, nuclear power, and the military. They identified that you can minimize error through education and by implementing standard processes to manage complex work, such as checklists and hard stops. There's also 3 key foundations that lead to a high reliable organization. That's leadership, a culture of safety, and having robust process improvement. Patient safety really became a bigger focus in the late 1990s and early 2000s when there was a landmark report titled To Err is Human that was made public. So this put a lot of focus and spotlight on safety within hospitals. And since then, we have learned a lot. And we started with focusing on microsystems and microprocesses and expanding that to the entire patient experience. And so through that time, we've learned the importance of this because medical error is a leading cause of death in the U.S. And we know that 1 in 10 patients potentially might experience an adverse event, meaning that there may have been some sort of preventable event that led to harm or injury to the patient. And it's important to understand that errors can occur at any point in a patient's journey, regardless of the clinical role or level of experience of the person involved. So we can have errors or mistakes or events or system weaknesses both in clinical and non-clinical settings. So it's important that we evaluate that entire picture. And that's why it's as a highly reliable organization that we strive to understand our risks and our weaknesses and then also teach error prevention to all of our employees. While there's a lot of moving pieces and parts to safety and process improvement, we have 3 big system safety goals that we focus on. So we have 2 each year, which are zero preventable harm, meaning that we're identifying and improving those preventable mistakes that reach the patient. And so we eventually achieve zero harm. And that's an outlandish and really big goal. But if we don't set it as a goal, then we'll never work to truly achieve it. And then also reducing patient falls. So we know that falling is a leading cause of harm or injury to patients and visitors. So we're always keeping an eye on that. And then we have some trending event types. So last year we focused on medication reconciliation, meaning that our patients' home meds and current ordered meds are aligned and we don't have any medication errors in that area. And then this year we'll be focusing on mislabeled specimens. So making sure that all specimens, whether on the outpatient side or within the hospital, are labeled accurately for our patients. A quick insight into the different meetings and committees that make up our safety program. So first we have what we call our daily safety huddle, and I'll go over this in a little bit more detail. But this is a 24-hour look back and a 24-hour look ahead so that we can understand and have transparency around any events and risks for leaders to be aware of. Next, we have what we call the HRO Patient Safety Committee. This is essentially everything safety and HRO, from event reporting to reviews and education, is all reviewed at this committee with our clinical leaders. That then reports up to Quality Council, which provides a much bigger quality oversight for all data and measures, and that is for all hospital leaders. We also have medical staff committees, which include our medical executive committee and peer review, and that's an opportunity to provide a similar focus, but specifically from the medical staff perspective. And then all of these report up and feed into board quality. So that is a subcommittee of our full board with a specific focus on quality, safety, and experience. So they have a more holistic perspective of everything that feeds into that, and for full transparency to that board, so they have full oversight. Here's a quick list of our patient safety policies to review and become familiar with. So first we have the patient safety evaluation system. This is a very lengthy policy, but it does provide a lot of good information about the importance of this structure of the patient safety program and the protections around that, and how we are able to review these patient safety activities and patient safety work products so that we can truly be a learning environment and have federal protections around that. Then we have our patient safety plan. This is the full outline of our patient safety program and outlines also the responsibilities of each individual as a hospital employee as a part of that plan. Next is event reporting. This provides just general information around our event reporting. So we'll go over this in a little bit more detail towards the end. But there is the how-to examples of events to report and what we do with those events. Then we have two that are somewhat similar. We have our root cause analysis. This is our process for reviewing all serious safety events, meaning any event that reached the patient and resulted in moderate to severe harm or death. We do a full review of that with action items. And then we have our critical incident policy. So not for serious safety events, but for trending events. It's just an opportunity to come together and again, review, improve, and create action items. We have our just culture policy, which goes over the importance of creating an environment where we focus and have both system and individual accountability, and that has balanced and creates an environment of trust. And then we have finally our adverse events and disclosure policy. So this just outlines the exact process for our adverse events and then disclosing those to patients and families when they occur. So I've talked a little bit about highly reliable organizations, or what I'll refer to as HROs moving forward. So HROs are built on 5 key principles. I'll outline those principles and then provide a simple explanation for what that means. So the first one is preoccupation with failures. And this means that employees in an HRO environment understand and assume that things will go wrong. Things will not always be perfect, so you'll be on the lookout for those weaknesses. The second is deference to expertise, which means that no one knows the work better than those who are doing it. So while we may have specific employees that work on process improvement, it's important that we go to the point of care and the expert sources to get a better understanding. Third is reluctance to simplify. So threats to safety are complex. We don't want to simplify those. So sometimes we'll see an event and we may have an assumption of an answer, but it's important that we dig deep and really understand what played into a specific error or mistake. The fourth is sensitivity to operations. So it's important that we have reliable communication practices across the entire system. And finally, commitment to resilience. So mistakes happen and we need to have the capabilities to overcome and improve moving forward. And when you put all 5 of these principles together and everyone practices that, that leads to an organization that has collective mindfulness. So overall, it's that mindfulness that helps support error prevention. So with our safety program here at Palmarine, we have taken those 5 principles of HROs and we have created more memorable safety behaviors to help remind you of what they are and how you can put those into your daily actions. So the first is be alert. Second, communicate clearly. Third, think critically. Four, speak up. And five, embrace learning. So I've introduced our 5 safety behaviors. Now, each of those behaviors has a safety habit or what we call an error prevention tool to put to use in your daily work. And this will help to prevent human errors. So with our first one, be alert, we have what's called the STAR tool. This is stop, think, act, and review. This is important to use when you're going from thought to action, meaning you pause for a second, you think about what you're doing, then you perform the actual act, and finally you review and check for a response. So a great example of this would be a nurse administering a blood pressure medication. First, if you get interrupted, you want to make sure that it's appropriate to give the patient that medication. So you need to stop and pause for a moment and just evaluate everything that goes into administering that medication. Then you actually give the medication, and finally you need to check for a response. Did the patient's blood pressure appropriately respond to that medication? Is that what you were anticipating to see? For clear communication, we have 2 tools. First being SBAR, and this is useful when you're reporting information. So everyone should be reporting information clearly in the same format so that you are intentional about what you're saying and you don't leave any of the important facts out. So first you'll report a situation, finally give a little bit of background, then your assessment, and finally a recommendation. So this can be used in any setting, whether you're clinical or non-clinical, and essentially you're saying, first of all, here's what's going on. Here's a little bit of background information to support that current event. Here's my assessment of these details, and here's what I'm asking of you or what I would recommend moving forward. And then second, we have clarifying questions. This is great for receiving information. So you don't ever want to carry out any actions based on assumptions. So ask a question in a way that will give you an answer that improves your understanding. So we're not looking for yes, no responses here. We're truly taking information and saying, I don't fully understand what you're saying. Can you describe that a bit more? Or to make sure I understand you correctly. Or you can simply say, I have a clarifying question, and then provide a little bit more detail of what you're looking for. While handoffs are not a specific habit, they are a structured communication tool or method that can be used to transfer essential patient information, such as during transitions in care, shift changes. You can do this between transfers between departments or even handoffs at the end of your shift or between teams. So we have some specific examples in use here, like our passport to surgery, our passport from PACU, we have shift reports, and we have our T-Systems clinical nursing report. So in a strong culture of safety, it's important that we create an environment where everyone feels comfortable speaking up. But just because you feel comfortable speaking up, it doesn't always mean that you'll get the response that you're looking for. So the CUS statement is a really helpful way to speak up so that we're all speaking the same universal language, and it helps to get a little bit more attention to your concern. So you can do this in 2 different ways. You can simply walk through the concern stating, I am concerned. Then you state why you are uncomfortable with that concern, and then say the specific safety issue. Or you can start by saying, I have a concern, and state it and see if you get a response. If you don't, you can take these next 2 steps to continue to elevate that concern up. So further identify why you are uncomfortable. And then finally, if you're still not getting a response, you need to stop the line and state, this is a safety issue, really draw attention to it, and what is the specific issue. Again, if you're still not getting the response that you need, you'll definitely have to follow your chain of command at that point and elevate this up so that we can prevent any harm or injury to a patient. So critical thinking may be a little self-explanatory, but practicing a questioning attitude is a great tool to use to help build that habit and that practice. So if something doesn't seem right, it probably isn't. So a few questions to ask yourself to practice that questioning attitude is, does it make sense? Does it fit with what I know? And is this what I expected to see? So you're validating the information you have and verifying that it's correct before you move forward. If you need any help in this situation, and if you feel like you can't get to the answer on your own, that's when it's important to defer to expertise or check with a reliable source or expert. For Embrace Learning, we don't have any safety habits, but we do just have some actionable daily activities, such as seeking feedback, participating in our debriefs, and then just continuing your self-learning journey. This could include peer-to-peer coaching, evaluations, joining professional organizations, online courses, or Pomerene has our HealthStream free CEs to participate in as well. So with patient experience, that often is driven by our patient safety. So when we provide safe and a trusting environment for our patients and families, their experience naturally goes up with that. We do also have ADET, which is a great patient experience tool just to help with your daily interactions with patients and families. So for A, we have acknowledge. That's just a simple greeting that sets that tone when you walk into a room and first introduce yourself to a patient. So you want to greet them by name, address their family members, and maintain eye contact. And at this point, it is perfectly okay to ask if they have like a nickname that they'd rather be acknowledged by. Then we have introduce. So after you've met the patient, you want to make sure that you introduce yourself as well. This just immediately sets that level of trust so that the patient knows who you are and what you're doing. So you state your name, your role, and you introduce and coach up your colleagues at shift change as well. Obviously, you don't have to do this every time that you interact with the patient, but anytime you meet someone new, such as maybe you walk in and there's a new visitor, it's perfectly okay to go through this process again. Then we have duration. So this is giving an estimated time frame for anything that the patient may be expecting, whether that's procedures or test results or physician visits. It is so important that we keep our patients up to date with the knowledge that we have at hand. So if an exact timing is unclear, just let them know an estimated time that they may be able to expect an update, or that you'll find out and you'll get back to them. And then it's important that you absolutely follow up on anything you told the patient you were going to look into. Then we have explanation. So be sure to walk your patients through the process, answer their questions, and ensure understanding. Sometimes as healthcare providers, we forget how foreign this entire healthcare process can be for our patients. And so it's important that we try to see it from their perspective and provide clarity in that communication, and it helps to reduce a lot of unease and uncertainty that they might be having. And then finally, a thank you. So express your gratitude for their patience and their cooperation, and make sure you acknowledge family members for their support for this patient as well. Okay, just a quick summary, because everything we just reviewed is one of those main takeaways for this training. So I know that felt like a lot of information, but I want to try and condense it down. So for our safety prevention tools, we have the STAR tool, which helps to prevent mistakes. We have clarifying questions, which is important for receiving information. And then we have SBAR, which is important for reporting information. We use the CUS statement to escalate concerns so that we're all speaking that same language. And finally, practice a questioning attitude to support your critical thinking. For learning, utilize debriefs and try to make learning a daily habit as you continue in your career. And then patient experience, we have acknowledge, introduce, duration, explanation, and thank you. In the quality module that you'll complete, we have the how to do our event reporting within MIDAS. So I wanted to review some examples of what could be reported. So these are some adverse events that might be reported. These are not common, thankfully, but these would obviously be things that you would want to report. And this is not by any means a complete list, just a few examples. So we have medication errors, which would be a more frequent event type you may see as a nurse or a clinical employee. Delayed treatment, that is kind of a more top trending event. So while there may not be a specific error, any sort of delay is considered as something that still reaches the patient. So it's important that we report that as well. Healthcare associated infections, if you're aware of those, diagnostic errors, patient falls, and actually this can be for patient or visitor. So any fall that you're aware of on the hospital premises. Surgical errors, pressure ulcers, any patient misidentification, unsafe blood transfusions, or like thromboembolisms, pressure injuries, anything like that. 4 events that we're reporting this can be for anything that reaches a patient or anything that you caught prior to reaching a patient. So it's important that you report both. Obviously, if it reaches the patient, we need to be aware of that. And then if it was caught prior to reaching the patient, that's great. That means that we have some barriers in place that help to catch that. But we still might want to take a closer look at it to see what else we can do to improve. We have a few different forms that can be used for safety event reporting. The first is our Great Catch form. This is anything that may not directly involve a patient, but you have recognized as an area of opportunity. We have our safety event, and that can be for patients and visitors. That is any general safety event that has the potential to reach the patient and was caught or did reach the patient. And this form can also be used for any workplace violence events. Then we have our medication event. This is similar to the safety event report, but more specific, so we have those medication details. Same with our patient or visitor fall form. And all four of these first four forms do include the reporter's name so that the manager can reach out for follow-up, and then we can also close the loop and let you know of any outcomes of the report. We do have two anonymous reports, and that is our safe staffing report and professional conduct. So like I had just mentioned, a great catch is anything before it reaches our patient or doesn't involve a patient, but it does involve faulty processes. So I like to give a simplified example. So let's say you see a puddle of water on the floor. You could either walk around it and hope the next person sees it as well and doesn't trip or slip. You could put out a wet floor sign, but simply keep going, or you could speak up, get a towel to dry up the water and remove the problem. So that C would be your example of reporting a great catch. So you're speaking up and saying, I saw this. I'm going to work to fix the problem now, but I also wanted to report it in case there isn't an immediate solution so that we can review it and create action items around that problem. I touched on this a little bit, but I want to go into more detail about what we do with our events. So we have our daily safety huddle, which is every Monday through Friday at 8:45 a.m. We talked about this a little bit at the beginning. So this is our foundation for the organization's event transparency and an opportunity to review those events and bring awareness to any other safety concerns for the day. And then finally, it's important that we close the loop. So managers address those events within MIDAS. It's important that they not only evaluate the event itself, but then any potential improvements to that. So again, these are great opportunities to review policy needs, technology, equipment, and educational resources. And then I will follow up with the staff regarding any outcomes from reviewing that event. And then creating a just culture is really what brings all of this together. So we've talked a lot today about human error. One thing we didn't talk a lot about was that we truly tried to focus first on system process issues. So when we have an event that occurs, we know that human error was involved. However, it's important that we take a look at the system as a whole and identify where the weaknesses were that led to that human error. Because a lot of times it's a issue with the process where the human was involved. And so when we have a just culture, we're creating a balance between a blameless environment, but also holding individuals accountable for their behavior. So we're not saying that humans are never at fault, but we're also not saying that humans are always at fault. We're looking at the system first. We're identifying if a system issue led to a human making a mistake, and if so, then that person would be considered blameless. However, if a person involved in an error has a pattern of poor behavior choices that continue to lead to errors, or if they were acting under the influence or in any form of negligence, then that is addressed differently. So with Just Culture, we're creating a culture of learning, and we're also striving to have an open and fair culture that's based on trust. Our focus is truly on designing safe systems and then also identifying those behavioral choices of the humans involved. Thank you everyone for taking the time to do this training. It really does take everyone working together and understanding the importance of your role in providing a safe, high quality experience and experience of care for our patients.